What is up guys, Julien here of Social Vignerons. Welcome back to another wine video. Today we are going to be looking at what makes the rosé wines from Provence so special, rather unique in the world of fine wines, especially talking about pink wines. Why are these wines from the sunny part of France so appreciated, and why has this style become so dominant in the world of rosé wines? We are going to be looking at what is the secret, or what are the secrets behind the wines from Provence. To keep things simple and digestible for you, I will break things down into 4 small chapters, and we are going to be looking at this while tasting to make things a little bit more fun. While tasting a fine, what I expect is going to be a fine and refined example by Chateau Routas, which is in the Coteaux Varois in Provence, so that's the southern part of Provence. So we are going to be discussing and exploring this particular wine, but more generally what is special about the wines of Provence. So point number 1, the style, the signature style of Provence Rosé wines. As you all know, Provence Rosés are pale and dry, vibrant, crisp, acidic, refreshing style of rosé wines. As you can definitely tell, you could probably tell with the color of this bottle already, with this transparent glass bottle, and you can also tell from the color of this wine, the Provence style is known and renowned for being particularly pale and dry. They pretty much invented that style. This is a food-friendly, refreshing style of a rosé wine that is not overly complicated, that is food-friendly, that is one that is meant to be enjoying and that is particularly enjoyable in summer. They've pretty much invented this style in Provence, or at least they've made it super popular. Essentially, everyone has been emulating this style from the success of the Provence wine style, and this is pretty much their traditional style. So they have had a historic advantage with this style, and everyone just loves their rosé to be dry and crisp and exuberant and fragrant and delicate in flavors as well. While in other areas, when you buy a rosé, you don't necessarily know exactly what you're going to be buying, whether it's going to be dry or half dry or sweet. It's going to be opulently fruity. When you buy a Provence wine, it's always going to be dry, it's always going to be subtle, it's always going to be refreshing, slightly salivating on the finish, and food friendly. And that's been a very big advantage of Provence rosé wines. Point number 2, and this is not that well known, the grapes of Provence for making rosé wines are rather interesting. First off, they have a signature grape variety in Provence that is called Cinsault. Cinsault is not a grape that is that much planted all around the globe. It is mainly, as far as I know, made and grown in Provence, and it is a grape that is particularly suited for making, guess what, rosé wines. This is a grape that retains quite a lot of acidity in the ripening season, so when you harvest it, it's going to retain a lot of crispness and a lot of acidity. A lot of Provence wines are made with a base of this Cinsault grape, and not many people have been able to emulate and plant these grapes so successfully. And this relates to the particular terroir of Provence that we're going to see a bit later on, because Cinsault requires and needs that terroir, specific terroir that is sunny but not too warm to retain that acidity and that salivating feel. So Cinsault is one of the secrets behind the Provence rosé wines. But not only. The people in Provence, for making the best possible rosé, also play around with blending different grape varieties. They don't want to be limited to one expression of one grape, so they are using other grape varieties, and mainly this is going to be Grenache, which is a more opulent, rich bodied grape variety with also a very signature floral violet violet type of aroma. So it's going to give much body amplitude to the palate feel as well as very fruity, pungent, floral expression to the palate. They also quite often use Syrah, which again is going to give, especially when picked a little bit early, it's going to give crisper acidity and a bit of pepperiness to the aromatic profile. So playing around with the different grape varieties, they are going to be able to craft an elegant, balanced, powerful, expressive rosé wine. So it is going to be refreshing and subtle, but they can also complement the blend with the best expression of the different parcels, the different blocks that they have on their estates. Which leads us to point number 3, the terroir. What's special about the terroir of Provence? But before we go there, I should talk to you about the Chateau Routas, archetypical example of that use of the blend. This is made for 45% Cinsault, so the Cinsault base, as I was talking about before, 35% Grenache to give it a bit of a round body, and 15%, 20% Syrah to give it a little extra hint of acidity, a bit of pepperiness, a bit of liveliness, of extra grip on the palate as well. But let's move on to the terroir of Provence. So terroir, as you know, is the combination of the climate, the soil, the topography, which is the way the plains and the valleys and the mountains are structured and where the vineyards are located. Provence doesn't have one individual singular terroir, signature terroir. The soils can be rather varied because there are different valleys. Provence is essentially nestled between the Alps mountains to the north and the Mediterranean coast. So they're having a Mediterranean climate. It is sunny, but it is not only sunny. They are getting some cold winds from the Alps, coming down from the Alps, and they are also getting a cooling influence from the Mediterranean. They have different valleys, so different types of soil. Quite often, and this is very important in the finesse of Provence, often though, there is quite a lot of limestone. So the most good properties are going to have blocks that are located on limestone. As we know, limestone, that is the case in Champagne, in Chablis, in Burgundy, in Saint-Emilion and many other excellent areas, particularly in France, but also around the world. Limestone gives this refinement, this finesse of expression. There is quite a lot of limestone in Provence, but not only, they're also getting some pebbles, some gravels, different irony, red soils. So on an individual property, they are going to be having different types of soils, some that are a bit more clayey, a bit more stony, a bit more limestone, and this is going to help them adapt different grape varieties and have different expression. And getting back to the blending that I was talking about before, this gives them a palette of expression in the different grapes and the different blocks that they have, making for a more refined. This allows them to make different levels of quality as well within the same property, because they're going to have very varied expressions of grapes. So a lot of sun they have, and this is great for making nice rosé wine. Most rosé wines come from rather sunny areas, but not only, there are some cool winds. There are very interesting aspects to the terroir of Provence, and this is very hard to imitate and emulate anywhere else in the world. And this is very true in the Chateau Routas. Well, I haven't been there, but from what I've read, they have some really red irony soils, as well as some soils that are much richer in limestone. As well, Chateau Routas is rather high in elevation, so this is also a factor in the terroir of Provence. They are located at around 13,000 feet above sea level. Altitude cools down the temperatures, particularly during the night, so the nights are going to be really pretty cold, which is going to help retaining the freshness. If it's always super sunny and very hot, the freshness and the acidity of the wine is just going to disappear as the grapes ripe. In Provence, because they have these cooling influences, they get this crispiness that is so unique about them. Finally, and this is going to be our point number 4, and this is a point that is often completely forgotten about when talking about the terroir. Terroir also, at least in the way the French concept exists, terroir also includes an element of tradition and an element of how people, traditionally, how people make their wine. So point number 4, what is crucial and special about Provence wines is their winemaking tradition, the way they craft their wines. The main point here is that Provence doesn't have an absolute secret in the way they make their wine. There is no individual precise recipe that they use that no one else has got. What they have though is a long history, a long tradition of making fine and refined rosé wines. Because they've pretty much invented the style, they have been aiming at making the finest possible rosé wines for a long time, which has led them to better understand their terroir, the different blocks and the different varieties that I was talking about before. They have been aiming at making rosé wines specifically for a very long time, which is really not the case for most other wine regions. In most other wine regions, they make red wines really well, they make white wines really well, and traditionally at least, they have been making a little bit of rosé, but they haven't really specifically grown grapes on specific terroirs that they like, growing vines, specific varieties that they like for making fine rosé wines. And you know, history, knowledge of making and crafting fine wines is really hard to beat. It takes time to get to that level of knowledge, to plant the right grape varieties on the right terroir, on the right soils, and learn slowly year after year how to make and craft the best wine. Because they are dedicated to crafting rosé wines more than in any other region, they take it very, very seriously. If you take again this example of this Chateau Routas, so it's made of different grape varieties. Most of it is fermented in stainless steel tanks, so this is to preserve the pure fruity expression and the freshness of the grape. But imagine, they take 8% of the Syrah, which if you remember makes 20% of this wine. 8% of the Syrah is fermented in a barrel, just to give it this extra hint of a body, this extra hint of roundness, this extra hint of vanilla. So in Provence, they are going to go this extra step of knowing exactly the precise amount of maybe barrels, the precise amount of working the lees in the tank, working each block from the harvest with the aim, with the vision of crafting an elegant and precise rosé wine. So the winemakers in Provence have become sort of masters of crafting pink wines, a little bit like in other areas, you know, in Bordeaux they have become masters in crafting, blending Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, and they know exactly each block, each vine, how it works, and it's just very, very hard to beat. In Provence they have the right grape varieties on the perfect climate, the perfect terroir, and on top of this they have acquired through generations and generations the knowledge and the know-how of how to craft these superb wines. So I know this may all seem a little bit complicated, but that's the magic and the wonder behind wine. It is not a simple technique, it is not a simple answer of why a particular wine is great and is better than other wines. Wine is a system of things, a combination of sun, of rain, of soil, of vines, of grape varieties, of crafting by the winemakers. And that's exactly the point with rosé wines. There is this whole of different elements that all come together to make what those wines special. And this is also why it is so hard to imitate and so hard to beat in other regions, because there are so many factors that come into play to craft these wines that, you know, you may find areas that are very suited for rosé wines as well somewhere else in the world, but it'll take them a long time to get to that level of refinement. And that's the big advantage that Provence has, and why it keeps this advantage, why it is hard to replicate this anywhere else in the world. And you find this with most top wine regions, the Bordeaux, the Burgundies, some of the Italians and the Spanish. It is quite hard to imitate and replicate the success of a particular wine style. It does simply takes time. But anyhow, I've talked a lot how special the rosé wines in Provence can be. Let's confirm this and dig a bit further into this Chateau Routas wine. I don't think I need to tell you anything more about this wine. I think we've covered it rather well. What is left for me to say is how it smells and how it tastes. How good is it? Wow, so you've seen, we've talked about the color. The aromatic profile is definitely extremely subtle, a bit like the color really. It is primarily about fresh pear, vibrant fresh pear, maybe a little bit of apple and a bit of pomegranate. It is also rather floral. I'm getting a little bit of elderflower. There's a hint of a strawberry, but my strawberry, this is not your strawberry jam or strawberry lolly type of strawberry. This is a fresh, crisp wood strawberry kind of aromatic profile, so very elegant. There's a sense of a herbal character, a little bit like fennel, a bit of a garrigue, a bit of herbal sense, rosemary and thyme. Again, this reminds us and transports us back to Provence as well. So very fine, refined aromatic profile, not the powerful fruity, pungent, red berry type of flavor. No, we are here always in Provence. Zesty expression. Zesty is absolutely the word. Often in Provence I'm finding a bit of a pink grapefruit character, and there's a hint of it here as well. So when enjoying Provence, they are easy wines to enjoy. They are very likable wines because the flavors are so delightful and pleasing straight away and satisfying. But if you really want to dig into the quality, what makes a rosé wine better than another, you kind of have to pay attention to what the wine tells you, because this is all elegant and all refined. And it's often the case with fine wines. You have to spend a bit more time, pay a bit more attention, dig, take the time to sniff the wine a bit further to really appreciate what it's got to say to it. All the subtleties, yes, subtleties, they are subtle, and they are the different subtleties that make a great, complex, fine wine. But let's dig further into the palate. Right. What strikes at tasting this wine is that obviously it is dry and it is crisp and it's got a vibrant acidity. It does, and it still makes me salivate on the finish, so delicate phenolics to the finish combined with the acidity. But what's extraordinary here is that while there is a line of acidity running all along the palate, all along the tasting experience, there is also a round oily texture on the background that makes the whole feel super smooth, super elegant, super pleasing, super thirst quenching, super satisfying to taste. But on top of this, there are some really expressive and interesting flavors that come and hint and tickle your taste buds. There is this herbal, slightly grassy, a bit of a grapefruity characters as well that is super interesting and makes it super zesty and vibrant, very interesting. There are the pomegranate and the slight delicate red berries that also makes the tasting experience super smooth. There is a vibrant pepperiness like a white pepper. So you're having a very satisfying, lean, dry expression as well as an oily texture. The whole is very balanced and harmonious. It is thirst quenching. You could just drink and enjoy this wine without thinking too much about it. That's what you want to do. But if you pay attention, if you pay close attention and analyze what's going on in your palate, you will find that it's also very refined, rather complex, quite savory with some saltiness, a bit of herbal bitterness as well, which amplifies the salivating feel, the food-friendly feel. So this is a wine that makes you want to dig into some appetizers, that makes you want to dig into some tapas. I am visualizing right now the specialties that they have in Provence that are just absolutely perfect with this type of wine. The pissaladière, which is kind of a pizza covered in onions and anchovies, as well as black olives, so super salty, salivating, juicy type of pizza without tomatoes. But also, you know, the tapenade, which is kind of this paste made from black or green olives with a bit of salt and a bit of lemon that you put on toast. So this type of super rich Mediterranean dishes, when you taste such a wine, you'd absolutely want to dig into some tasty foods, some garlicky, herbal foods. And those wines are simply an invitation to enjoy life, to enjoy the sun and the heat of summer, to enjoy the company of the people that you're with. These are just simply super friendly, inviting wines, an invitation, yeah, to enjoy and live and love life. And perhaps that's the fifth secret behind Provence wines. I didn't think doing this video this would get me there, but just tasting the wines, yeah. The Provence wines are wines to be enjoyed fully. They remind you that life is beautiful, that sharing wine and sharing life and sharing good food is one of the essential pleasures of life. And that's also the fifth element of the Provence, the success and the refinement of Provence wines. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will link to Chateau Routas down in the description below if you want to learn more about this winery. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like. It only takes 1 second, but it helps me quite a lot sharing the knowledge and passion that we share, that we have both, all of us, about wine. And I will see you soon in the world of wine. Cheers. Santé.